Look at the item nearest to you right now. Maybe it's the phone you're holding, listening to this deep dive.
Or a cup.
Or maybe it's a ceramic mug of coffee steaming on the table in front of you. It sits there, solid, singular, and quiet. But if you really look at it, and I mean, if you put on a pair of X-ray glasses that could see history and economics, that object just dissolves.
It really does.
It stops being just a thing and starts looking like the end point of this massive invisible web. A web that stretches across oceans, crosses borders, negotiates treaties, and links millions and millions of lives.
It's the ultimate butterfly effect, isn't it? You tap a screen in New Delhi and a stock moves in New York.
Exactly.
You sip coffee in Seattle and a farmer in Ethiopia plants a seed. It is a web that is just constantly vibrating 24/7.
Exactly. And today, that's what we're doing. We are tracing that web. We are diving into Chapter 9 of Human Geography, International Trade.
But not just reading it.
No. We aren't just reciting the textbook definitions. We are trying to understand the nervous system of the global economy. We're going to look at why nations trade, how they sometimes cheat, how they regulate, and, where all this stuff actually enters and leaves the country.
And crucially, for our specific audience today, we are going to connect these high-flying concepts directly to the ground reality of the UPSC examination. We need to see how the exam setters take these big global ideas and turn them into, well, tricky prelim statements and some really tough mains questions.
That is the mission. But before we start unraveling this global nervous system, I want to give a massive, massive welcome to everyone listening. This is a special deep dive brought to you by the Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel. We are just incredibly excited to have you here with us.
It's great to be here, and the energy in the community lately has just been fantastic.
It really has. Now, a quick but very important request to you, the listener. We put a huge amount of work into synthesizing these deep dives, combing through the NCERTs, the source files, the PYQs.
It takes a lot of time.
It does. And if you find value in this, please, humbly, I ask you to subscribe to the Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel. It really helps with retention and lets the algorithm know we're doing something right.
And for those of you who are capable, supporting the channel on Patreon is, well, it's deeply appreciated. It keeps this super useful content coming and keeps the lights on, so to speak.
Absolutely. A huge shout out to all our current supporters. You guys are the fuel in the engine. And hey, engage with us. Like the video or the audio, share a comment, tell us what you think.
We do read them.
We read them and they matter. Also, just so you know, free notes with practice previous year questions, or PYQs, are available on our public Telegram channel.
And for the serious learners who want the full archive, the no distraction zone, you can join the private Telegram library. That's where you get access to all the videos in this series at once, plus organized premium notes.
And these are not just any notes. We're talking detailed notes, extra PYQs, and model mains answers. It's the full package.
To get in, just DM the public Telegram channel to join.
Okay, business aside, let's get to the mission. Our objective today is crystal clear. We are doing a comprehensive audio summary of NCERT Class 12 Human Geography, Chapter 9. But we aren't just reading the book.
Never.
We are connecting the dots between the text and the actual UPSC PYQs that keep popping up in the exam.
That is the key. Information is good, but application is what gets you the marks. We need to see how these concepts, like the World Trade Organization or balance of payment, actually appear on the paper.
So let's start at the very beginning. Section 1, the basics of trade. We often hear the word trade and we think of stock markets flashing red and green numbers or these massive container ships stacked high. But at its absolute core, what is it?
Well, we have to strip away all that complexity first. If we look at the definition from the source material, and it specifically references the Chapter 7 linkage, trade is essentially a tertiary activity.
Okay, that's its category.
That's the classification.
Yeah.
But functionally, it is the voluntary exchange of goods and services. And the text lays down two fundamental rules for trade to even exist.
Lay them on me.
Rule number 1, you need two parties, a buyer and a seller. Pretty straightforward. You cannot trade with yourself.
Makes sense.
Rule number 2, it has to be mutually beneficial.
Mutually beneficial. I have to pause there. That sounds like a very optimistic, almost utopian way to look at it. I mean, history is full of exchanges that didn't feel very beneficial to one side.
And you are right to be skeptical. In principle, economic theory states that both parties participate because they believe they will gain something. That's the core idea.
So it's about perception.
It's about perceived utility. If I have excess wheat and you have excess wool and we swap, we are both, in theory, better off than we were alone. That's the theory of utility. Both sides gained utility.
But the reality can be very, very different.
The reality is often determined by power dynamics, by information asymmetry, by all sorts of factors. But the core definition remains. Trade happens because both sides want something the other has.
Right. Now, we didn't always have massive container ships and digital wire transfers. The text takes us way back to primitive society, the barter system.
The basics. The direct exchange of goods. In India, we had the Jajmani system, which was a local variation of this, where services were exchanged for produce within the village community.
So a very local, closed-loop system.
Exactly. But barter generally is messy. It's really inefficient.
It sounds romantic, but efficient. No.
Not at all. Imagine you're a potter. You make beautiful clay pots, but your sink is broken. You need a plumber.
Okay.
In a barter system, you can't just pay a plumber. You have to find a plumber who not only can fix your sink, but specifically wants a clay pot right now.
Ah, the famous double coincidence of wants. I remember this from economics class.
Exactly. It is a logistical nightmare.
Right.
You might find a plumber, but maybe he wants a chicken, not a pot. So now you have to find a chicken farmer who wants a pot, trade for the chicken, and then go all the way back to the plumber.
The transaction cost is insane.
The friction is incredibly high. It limits the scale and speed of the economy.
That sounds exhausting. I'd probably just live with a broken sink.
Many people probably did. And that's precisely why the shift to money exchange was so revolutionary. Money gave us a common unit of value. It acted as a lubricant.
It's a medium of exchange.
A medium of exchange, a store of value. It just smoothed everything out. It allowed trade to scale from the local village to the international stage. You sell your pot for money, you pay the plumber with money, the plumber uses the money to buy a chicken, everyone wins, and it happens fast.
So money unlocks scale. And speaking of scale, the history of international trade is a wild ride. The text mentions that in ancient times, you couldn't just ship anything. Transport was incredibly risky.
It was incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
There were bandits on land, pirates at sea, storms, and absolutely zero insurance.
Right.
If a ship sank, you lost everything. If a caravan was raided, you were probably dead. Because the risk was so high, you only traded items that could justify that risk.
High value, low volume.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You aren't going to transport wheat or timber across the world on a camel. It's too heavy and it's too cheap. The potential profit doesn't cover the risk.
So what did they trade?
You transport gems, silk, spices, things that fit in a small bag but could buy a castle.
The Silk Route.
The classic example, spanning 6,000 kilometers, connecting Rome and China. It wasn't a highway for grain, it was a highway for luxury. It was trade for the elites.
And for a very long time, that's what international trade was.
For a very long time, yes. It was a niche activity for the wealthy.
But then the text takes a much darker turn. We move to the 15th century. The source material explicitly mentions the slave trade, and this is where that mutually beneficial definition we started with really, really collapses.
It does, and we must discuss this with the gravity it deserves. The text outlines how the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Spaniards, and the British participated in capturing and transporting African people to the Americas.
Turning human beings into commodities.
Precisely. And economically, this was a massive shift. This wasn't just trading luxury goods anymore. This was trading the means of production labor itself to fuel the plantations.
Right.
This forced labor produced the sugar, tobacco, and cotton that built immense wealth in the West. The text notes this continued for centuries until it was abolished in Denmark in 1792 and Great Britain in 1807. It fundamentally shaped the modern world economy.
And following that era, we hit the Industrial Revolution. This seems to be the moment where the entire logic of trade flips on its head.
It changed the composition entirely. Before this, you traded luxury goods. After the Industrial Revolution, industrialized nations like the UK became hungry beasts. They had factories to run and cities full of workers to feed.
So they needed inputs.
Massive amounts of raw materials. They needed grain, meat, and wool to feed their growing urban workforce and to feed the factories themselves with things like cotton.
And in return, what were they exporting?
In return, they exported finished, manufactured goods, textiles, machinery, tools. This created a new center-periphery relationship in the global economy.
Explain that.
The industrial center, like Europe, imported low-value raw materials from the periphery, the colonies, and exported high-value finished goods back to them. It was a system designed to benefit the center.
Which brings us to the big question, why? Why do we trade at all? Why doesn't every country just make everything they need? Autarky, right?
It comes down to those two economic principles mentioned in the text. specialization, and comparative advantage. Basically, it's inefficient for everyone to do everything.
So the idea is you should make what you are best at making and trade for the rest.
Exactly. Even if you can make everything, it's not efficient to do so. You're better off focusing your resources on what gives you the biggest bang for your buck.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, the basis of international trade. If nations are supposed to specialize, what determines what they specialize in? The source material lists 5 major factors. Let's unpack them. Factor 1 is difference in national resources.
This is the geography part of human geography. It's about the physical hand you're dealt by nature. You can't change it. And the first part of that is geological structure.
So what's under the ground? Topography, crops, minerals?
Exactly. The text uses the example of South Africa. Why are they a major player in diamonds and gold? Is it because they just decided to be? No. It's because their geological structure contains kimberlite pipes and gold reefs. That resource is physically located there.
You can't just find diamonds anywhere.
No. And you contrast that with a lowland region, maybe your Great River Delta.
Like the Gangetic Plain?
A lowland region like that might have 0 valuable minerals, but it might have deep alluvial soil perfect for agriculture. So the lowland region specializes in wheat or rice, and the highland region specializes in minerals.
Sure.
They trade. They have to trade to get what they don't have.
And connected to that very closely is climate.
Climate dictates flora and fauna. The source gives a classic example, the Mediterranean region. They have a very specific climate, wet winters, dry summers.
Which is terrible for something like rice, but amazing for...
Grapes for wine and citrus fruits. You simply cannot replicate the terroir of a Mediterranean vineyard in a tropical rainforest. So if the world wants authentic Chianti, they have to trade with Italy. The climate creates a sort of natural monopoly.
Right. Sweden isn't going to start exporting mangoes anytime soon, and India isn't going to be the world's leading producer of maple syrup.
Precisely. Another example the text gives is wool production. It's concentrated in temperate regions where the climate is suitable for raising sheep. You trade what your climate allows you to produce efficiently.
Okay, that makes sense. Factor 2 involves the people themselves, population factors. The text splits this into cultural aspects and population size. I love the cultural aspect. This is where art and heritage meet economics.
It's fascinating. Distinctive cultures create demand for distinctive goods that can't be replicated elsewhere. The text lists some great examples. Porcelain from China.
The famous Ming vases.
Right. Carpets from Iran, leatherwork from North Africa, and batik cloth from Indonesia.
These aren't just commodities. They're not just textiles or rugs.
No, they are pieces of culture. You can build a factory in Detroit and make a rug, but you cannot make a Persian carpet. The value is in the lineage, the traditional knowledge passed down through generations, the cultural provenance. That branding, which is really just authenticity, creates a massive trade advantage.
True. But what about population size? The text says something interesting here, that a large population can actually reduce international trade. That feels counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You'd think more people means more trade, but dense populations often have huge internal markets.
Explain what that means.
If you have 1 billion people, like India or China, a lot of what you produce gets consumed right there within your own borders. The domestic demand is enormous.
So you're busy feeding your own people, clothing your own people.
Exactly. There might not be a massive surplus to put on ships and export. Specifically for agriculture, a large population eats a lot of food, so they might not export food. They might actually need to import it just to sustain themselves, even if they're a huge agricultural producer.
And the standard of living matters here too, right?
Immensely. The text points this out. If your population is wealthy, they demand better quality and a wider variety of goods, including luxury goods, which drives imports. If the population is poor, they stick to local necessities, and the demand for foreign goods is low.
Got it. Okay, factor 3 is the stage of economic development.
This is about where you are in the development timeline. It's the evolution of an economy from agrarian to industrial to service-based.
So a country's trade profile changes over time.
Completely. The text is clear on this. Agricultural countries, in the early stages, typically exchange agro-products for manufactured goods. They export raw materials and import machinery.
And industrialized nations?
Industrialized nations do the reverse. They export high-value machinery and finished products and import food grains and raw materials to fuel their industries.
But this isn't static. This isn't a permanent state.
Not at all. As countries develop, they climb this ladder. Look at South Korea. They went from exporting simple textiles to exporting cars and semiconductors. India used to export mostly raw materials and agricultural products. Now it exports software, pharmaceuticals, and cars. The nature of what you trade is a direct reflection of how mature your economy is.
Okay, factor 4 is foreign investment. This feels very modern, very much a part of the current globalized system.
It is a catalyst. Think about a developing nation. It might have the copper or the lithium sitting under the ground. It has the resource.
We can't get to it.
Right. It lacks the capital. The billions of dollars for giant excavators, processing plants, rail lines to the coast to actually extract and export it.
That's where foreign investment comes in.
Exactly. Industrial nations or multinational corporations invest capital to develop mining or oil drilling or heavy engineering in developing nations. And let's be clear, they don't do it out of the kindness of their hearts.
It's not charity. It's a business decision.
No. They do it for two main reasons, according to the text. First, to ensure a steady supply of those raw materials for their own industries back home.
Securing the supply chain.
Precisely. And second, to create a market for their finished goods. Once you build a mine, you also sell them the trucks, the software, the equipment. It creates a cycle. The investing nation gets the raw materials, and the developing nation gets the infrastructure and jobs, but often at the cost of ownership and environmental impact.
Finally, factor 5, transport. We already touched on this with the Silk Road, but how has it changed things more recently?
It's all about the expansion of the spatial range of trade. Better and cheaper transport shrinks the world. The development of rail, ocean shipping, and air transport made it possible to move more goods faster and for less money.
But the text specifically highlights one technology that was a complete game changer: refrigeration.
The cold chain, yes. Think about the pre-refrigeration world. If you slaughtered a cow in Argentina, you had to eat it in Argentina, or at least salt it heavily.
You couldn't ship fresh meat across the ocean.
No, it would rot in days. Trade in perishable goods, meat, dairy, fruits, vegetables was almost impossible over long distances.
So it was all local.
It had to be. Refrigeration and preservation technology unlocked entirely new categories of trade. Now you can have New Zealand lamb in a London restaurant. You can have Norwegian salmon in a Tokyo sushi bar. You can have Chilean grapes in a U.S. supermarket in the middle of winter. That technology expanded the spatial range of trade to the entire globe for almost any product.
So we know why we trade. Now let's talk about how we measure it. Section 3, measuring trade. The text talks about volume, composition, and direction. Volume seems straightforward. It's just the tonnage, the weight of the stuff, right?
Well, traditionally, yes. When trade was mostly coal and grain and iron ore, tonnage worked as a good measure. But there's a catch in the modern world.
What's the catch?
Services. Services have no weight. You can't weigh a software consultancy contract, you can't put a banking transaction on a scale, or weigh a streaming movie.
So how do we measure it then?
The total volume of trade is actually measured by the total value of all goods and services traded, the dollar amount, or euro amount. And if you look at the charts in the source, that value has been steadily and dramatically rising for decades.
Okay, so that's volume. Then we have composition. We touched on this already, the shift from primary products to manufactured goods. But there's a new trend mentioned, the rise of the service sector.
This is the modern shift. It's a huge part of the story. Travel, transportation, commercial services like banking and insurance. The global economy is becoming less about moving stuff and more about moving ideas, skills, and access.
Intellectual property.
Exactly. Intellectual property is becoming the most valuable commodity. A patent for a new drug or the code for a piece of software can be worth more than a shipload of iron ore.
Now, this next part really stood out to me. The direction of trade and what the text calls the historical reversal. It's like a massive pendulum swing over centuries.
It is a perfect description of geopolitical and economic history, all in one concept. In the past, going back centuries, developing countries, places like India and China, were the exporters. They were the world's workshop.
We're the manufacturers.
Yes, they exported high-value, sophisticated goods, Indian textiles, Chinese silk and porcelain, spices from the East Indies. They exported these to Europe.
So the wealth flowed from west to east?
Largely, yes. Then the 19th century happens, the Industrial Revolution. The pendulum swings hard the other way.
The reversal.
Europe and the UFA industrialize. They start exporting manufactured goods and using their colonies just as a source for cheap raw materials. The flow reversed completely. Now wealth flowed from east to west.
And now, in the 21st century.
We are seeing another massive shift. Europe has lost its colonies. India and China are industrializing again and rapidly. They are competing directly with the developed nations in manufacturing and increasingly in tech.
So the pendulum is swinging back. It's more complicated than that. The USA and Europe are still leaders, but the monopoly is gone. The pattern is much more complex now. It's multipolar. We see goods and services flowing in every direction. It's not a simple center-periphery model anymore.
Before we move on to policy, we have to define balance of trade. This is something that comes up in the news constantly. Favorable versus unfavorable.
It is a simple accounting equation, but it dictates the economic health of a nation. The balance of trade is simply the value of your exports minus the value of your imports.
Simple math.
Very simple. If you sell more than you buy, your exports are greater than your imports, you have a positive balance. That's called a favorable balance of trade.
And if it's the other way around?
If you buy more than you sell, imports are greater than exports, it's a negative balance, an unfavorable balance of trade.
And why is a negative balance considered bad? I mean, I buy way more from the grocery store than they buy from me, and I'm doing fine. Because you aren't a country. You have a job that earns you currency to pay for the groceries. For a nation, a persistent negative balance means you are spending more foreign currency than you are earning from your exports.
So your national savings account is going down.
That's a great way to put it. The text explicitly warns. This leads to the exhaustion of financial reserves. You're bleeding foreign currency like dollars or euros.
And when the savings account runs dry?
Exactly. When a country's reserves run dry, its own currency can collapse. It can't buy essential imports like oil, medicine, or crucial machine parts. It can lead to a severe economic crisis. That's why balance of trade is watched so closely by governments and central banks.
That segues perfectly into Section 4, the architecture of trade. How do countries manage all this? The text starts with two types of trade, bilateral and multilateral.
Right, bilateral is intimate. It's like a one-on-one contract between two countries.
Give me an example.
Country A agrees to sell a certain amount of its raw material, say copper, to Country B. In return, Country B agrees to sell a specified item, maybe some machinery, to Country A. It's a specific, negotiated deal between just two parties.
And multilateral?
Multilateral is like a networking event or a big club. You agree to trade with many countries under a common set of rules. And this is where the text introduces the concept of most favored nation, or MFN status.
That sounds like you're picking a best friend. You're my most favored nation.
It's actually the opposite, which is a bit confusing. If you grant MFN status to a country under the rules of the WTO, you are promising to treat them no worse than you treat your best trading partner.
So it's a non-discrimination clause.
Exactly. You can't discriminate. If you lower tariffs on cars from one MFN partner, you have to lower them for all your MFN partners. It promotes equality of treatment.
But it's not always a friendly mixer. We have this huge battle between free trade and protectionism. This is a massive political debate right now.
It is. It's probably the central debate in trade policy. The case for free trade, or liberalization, argues for opening up economies. Let the market decide. Remove the barriers like tariffs and quotas.
Let the goods flow freely?
Yes. But there's a risk, a big one, which the text identifies as dumping.
Dumping? It sounds unpleasant.
Economically, it is toxic. It's when a country or a company sells goods in a foreign market at a price that is cheaper than it costs to produce them back home.
Why on earth would they lose money on purpose?
It's a predatory strategy. It's not about short-term profit. It's about long-term market capture.
To kill the competition?
Exactly. Imagine Country A floods Country B with steel sold at half the production cost. Country B's domestic steel mills can't possibly compete with that price. They go bankrupt. They shut down their factories.
And once they're all gone...
Country A, now facing no competition, jacks up the prices. They have captured the market. That's why countries use protectionism, imposing tariffs and customs duties to shield their own domestic industries from these predatory tactics.
And overseeing this chaotic playground is the WTO, the World Trade Organization.
The referee. It's meant to be the referee anyway. It has a history. It started as GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, formed in 1948.
Right after World War II.
It was part of that whole post-war attempt to rebuild the global economy and prevent the kind of protectionism that contributed to the Great Depression. Then, on January 1st, 1995, GATT was transformed and expanded into the WTO. It's headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland.
The source says it has 164 members as of 2016, and India is a founder member. What's its actual job? What does it do day to day?
It's the only international body that deals with the global rules of trade between nations. Its main function is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible.
So it resolves disputes.
Yes, if country A thinks country B is dumping steel, they don't go to war. They file a complaint with the WTO. The WTO has a dispute settlement body that investigates and makes rulings.
And how is it different from the old GATT?
This is a crucial distinction, and one the exam might test. GATT was mostly about trade in goods, physical things. The WTO is much broader. It covers services too, telecommunications, banking, tourism, and intellectual property rights. It reflects the modern, service-based economy.
But it's not without its critics.
Not at all. The text notes the major critique. Does free trade, as promoted by the WTO, actually widen the gap between rich and poor nations?
How so?
The argument is that rich, developed nations often dictate the terms of the agreements. They can force developing nations to open their markets to foreign competition while keeping their own markets, especially in sensitive areas like agriculture, protected with subsidies.
So it's a rigged game in the eyes of many.
That's the criticism, that it benefits the powerful and can harm vulnerable industries in poorer countries.
Because of that, or perhaps in parallel to it, we see the rise of regional trade blocs.
Exactly. When the global organization, the WTO, moves too slowly or seems unfair, neighbors get together.
It's easier to agree with a few countries than with 164.
Much easier. The text mentions a few reasons. The failure of global organizations to speed up trade, geographical proximity, and similarities in the items they produce and trade. The text has a stunning statistic. 120 regional blocs now generate 52% of all world trade.
That is a massive chunk, more than half.
It is. Groups like the European Union or ASEAN or the USMCA in North America, they say, okay, maybe the whole world can't agree on everything, but we neighbors can agree to lower tariffs among ourselves. It's faster and easier to manage.
Okay, let's ground this literally. How does all this stuff actually get in and out of a country? Section 5, Gateways of International Trade Ports. The text calls them gateways.
They are the lungs of the economy. Cargo comes in, cargo goes out, travelers pass through. The text makes a great point. You can actually judge the economic health of a region, its hinterland, the area it serves, just by looking at how busy its port is.
So if the port is quiet, the factory built inland are stopped.
That's a very good way to put it. The activity at the port is a direct indicator of the economic activity of its hinterland.
We have a few classifications here in the text. First is classification by cargo handled.
Right. You have industrial ports, think bulk cargo. This is the unglamorous heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Grain, sugar, ore, oil, chemicals. Then you have commercial ports. These handle what's called general cargo, like packaged products, manufactured goods, and also passengers.
And a third type.
Comprehensive ports. These are the giants. They handle everything. Bulk cargo, general cargo, passengers, in massive volumes. Most of the world's great ports, Rotterdam, Shanghai, Singapore, are comprehensive ports.
Then we have classification by location. This was interesting, inland ports. I always think of a port as being on the coast.
Not necessarily. A port doesn't have to be on the ocean. If you have a deep, navigable river or a major canal, you can bring ocean-going ships far inland.
Can you give some examples?
The text mentions Manchester in the UK, which is famously linked by a canal to the sea. Memphis is deep inside the USA, but it's a major port because it sits on the Mississippi River. In Europe, Mannheim and Duisburg are huge ports on the Rhine River. And in India, Kolkata on the Hooghly, which is a distributary of the Ganga, is a classic riverine port.
And what are outports?
These are like the satellite parking lots for the main port. As ships got bigger and bigger, supertankers and huge container ships are massive. The old, historic parent ports in city centers became too shallow or too congested to handle them.
So they had to build a new facility.
Exactly. You build a deep water port nearby, away from the city, to handle the big boys. The text gives the example of Athens in Greece as the parent port and its outport, Piraeus, which handles the large, modern traffic.
Okay, this last classification is my favorite. Classification by specialized function. It's so specific.
It really shows how trade shapes infrastructure. First, you have oil ports. These can be tanker ports, which just load or unload crude oil, like Maracaibo in Venezuela or Tripoli in Lebanon. Or they can be refinery ports where the crude is processed, like Abadan in Iran.
Then ports of call. These have a nostalgic history.
They do. Originally in the age of steamships, ships couldn't travel indefinitely. They needed to stop to take on coal for fuel, fresh water, and food. Ports like Aden, Honolulu, and Singapore started as just rest stops.
Like a gas station on a global highway.
Exactly. But over time, because they were strategic stopping points, people settled there, businesses grew, and now they've become major commercial hubs in their own right. But their origin was just a refueling stop.
What about packet stations?
Think of these as ferry ports. They specialize in short-distance transport of mail or packets and passengers across water bodies. The classic example given is Dover in England and Calais in France, connecting the UK and mainland Europe across the English Channel. They are all about speed and constant connection across a narrow channel.
And finally, the Entrepôt. It's a French word.
It is. It means a collection center or a warehouse. Goods are brought to an entrepôt port, not to be consumed by the locals, but to be collected, sorted, repackaged, and then exported to some other country.
So it's a global transshipment hub, a warehouse for the world.
A perfect description. The text gives three fantastic examples. Singapore is the great entrepôt for all of Asia. Rotterdam is the entrepôt for Europe, and Copenhagen serves that function for the Baltic region. Ships from all over the world drop off goods, they're sorted or stored, and then put on other, often smaller ships to their final destination.
And last on this list, naval ports.
These are purely strategic. They are for warships, not commerce. They serve a country's defense needs. The text gives the Indian examples of Kochi and Karwar.
Okay, expert. This is where we earned our keep. Section 6, PYQ linkage. We have the NCERT theory down. Now let's look at these source snippets from the Simplified UPSC by PPP files. We need to show the listener how the exam actually uses this information. I'm looking at a question here from 13G's 3.pdf about FDI in retail.
Right. The question asks about the impact of FDI entry into multi-trade retail sector on supply chain management. A very specific mains question.
So how does that connect back to what we just discussed in Chapter 9?
Remember Factor 4, foreign investment as a basis of trade. The text said that foreign capital helps develop industries in developing nations.
Right.
Here, the exam is asking you to apply that broad concept to a specific sector, retail. If foreign giants like Walmart or Tesco enter the Indian market, they bring capital? Yes. But the key linkage in the question is supply chain management.
So the answer isn't just about money flowing in.
No, that's the surface-level answer. The simplified UPSC linkage here is to see FDI as a vehicle for technology and knowledge transfer that improves the internal trade infrastructure. They bring sophisticated technologies, refrigerated trucks, logistics tracking software, efficient inventory management, the cold chain we talked about.
Which reduces waste and improves efficiency for everyone.
Exactly. It modernizes the internal trade structure from the farm to the store. That's the deeper connection the question is probing.
Very interesting. Now look at 20CSP1.pdf. There's a prelims question about non-financial debt. This seems a bit far-fetched.
This is a tricky one, designed to test if you can connect micro and macro concepts. The question asks what is included in non-financial debt, and the options are housing loans, credit cards, and treasury bills.
Why is this relevant to a chapter on international trade?
It connects to the balance of payment concept. While Chapter 9 focuses narrowly on balance of trade, goods and services, the UPSC exam often expects you to know the broader context of the balance of payments, which includes all financial transactions.
So how does non-financial debt fit in?
The answer involves understanding that non-financial debt includes debt held by households, like housing loans and credit cards, and government entities, like treasury bills. It's a measure of the overall debt burden on the economy outside of the banking sector itself.
So why does that matter for a trade student?
Because it's a key indicator of the internal stability of the market that is doing the trading. If your households are drowning in non-financial debt, they can't afford to consume imported goods. The demand for imports might fall, which would affect your balance of trade. It's a macroeconomic indicator of the health of your trading partners and your own economy.
Okay, that makes sense. There's also a mention of TRIMS in that same PDF.
Yes, TRIM stands for Trade-Related Investment Measures. This is a direct WTO concept. The PYQ statement says, quantitative restrictions on imports by foreign investors are prohibited.
Connect that back to the NCERT text.
Remember in Section 4 we said the WTO sets the global rules of trade? TRIMS is one of those specific rulebooks. It deals with rules that countries apply to foreign investors.
And what does it prohibit?
It prohibits rules that discriminate against foreign goods. For example, under TRIMS, a country can't tell a foreign car company, you can set up a factory here, but you must buy 70% of your parts from local suppliers. That's a local content requirement, and it's prohibited. The PYQ statement about prohibiting quantitative restrictions on imports is a core principle of TRIMS.
So it promotes that liberalization we discussed in Section 4. It prevents protectionism against foreign investors.
Exactly. The exam expects you to know not just that the WTO exists, but the specific agreements, TRIMs, TRIPS, GATTs that make up the rules of the game.
Got it. Now let's look at 16CSP1.pdf. It mentions the term import cover.
This is a critical definition directly linked to our discussion on the balance of trade. The PYQ snippet asks what the term import cover best describes.
And the answer is?
Import cover is the number of months of imports that can be paid for by a country's existing stock of foreign exchange reserves.
Ah, and the NCERT text warned us. A negative balance of trade leads to the exhaustion of financial reserves.
Exactly. Import cover is the metric for that exhaustion. It's the practical measurement of that theoretical danger. If a news report says a country has only 2 weeks of import cover, it means they are in a severe economic crisis.
Yeah.
If they have 12 months, they are stable. It's the gas gauge for the national economy. The exam wants to know if you can read that gauge.
One last one from the source files, run-of-river hydroelectricity. This seems like an outlier.
This is from 13g3.pdf. It's a bit outside Chapter 9 directly, but it relates back to Factor 1, difference in national resources. Remember, geological structure and topography determine your resources.
So this is about resource management.
Yes, a run-of-river project is a type of hydroelectric generation that doesn't involve building a large dam and reservoir. It uses the natural flow and elevation drop of a river. It's a resource management strategy with different environmental impacts than large dams.
So why link it to a discussion on trade?
Because energy is a fundamental input for all manufacturing and modern life. If you want to export manufactured goods, you need cheap, reliable power. How you manage your hydro resources, your national resources, effectively gives you a comparative advantage in energy-intensive industries. It's an upstream factor that affects your downstream trade competitiveness.
It's amazing how these snippets, which look random at first, actually anchor right back into the core concepts from the geography textbook.
That's the entire point of the simplified UPSC approach.
Yeah.
It's not about memorizing thousands of isolated facts. It's about building a mental framework where everything connects.
Let's move to the final piece of the puzzle then. Section 7, Human Settlements Linkage. This pulls from Chapter 10. We can't talk about trade without talking about where the traders live and work.
Absolutely not. Settlements and trade are inseparable. Many towns and cities exist because of trade. The text distinguishes between rural marketing centers, which are very basic, and urban marketing centers.
But then it gives us a list of specific trading towns. This is a useful typology.
It is. Look at the categories. First, agricultural markets. Winnipeg and Kansas City. These cities didn't just pop up randomly. They exist because they are in the middle of vast wheat-growing regions. They are collection and distribution points for that trade.
Then banking and financial centers. Frankfurt, Amsterdam.
These are the hubs of capital that finance the trade. They provide the loans, the insurance, the currency exchange that makes the physical movement of goods possible.
Inland centers. Manchester, St. Louis, transport nodes, Lahore, Baghdad, Agra.
These are historic. They grew because they were on the path of major trade routes, either rivers or land routes. They are nodes in the network.
And then there are administrative towns.
National capitals, mostly. Yeah. The text lists New Delhi, Canberra, Beijing, Addis Ababa, London. Their primary function is administration and governance. But that concentration of power and population naturally attracts commerce and trade.
The text gives a deep dive into Addis Ababa as a case study.
It's a great case study in urban morphology, the form and structure of a settlement. The name itself means new flower.
It's located on a hill-valley topography.
And look at its trade credentials, which the text highlights. It has the Mercado market, which it claims is the largest open-air market between Cairo and Johannesburg.
Huge trading hub.
A massive hub. And it has the Djibouti-Addis Ababa Railroad terminating there, linking the landlocked country to the sea. It's a perfect example of a multifunctional node. It's a center for education, administration, and crucially, for trade.
So from the humble barter of a pot for a plumbing job to the sprawling Mercado in Ethiopia and the digital calculations of import cover in the UPSC exam, it's all the same story, really.
It is the story of connection, of need and supply, risk and reward.
Okay, let's wrap this up. We've had a long journey. We've traveled from the ancient Silk Route to the modern WTO. We've seen how geology determines whether you sell diamonds or wheat. We've looked at ports as the gateways and specialized towns as the nodes in this global network.
And we've seen that for you, the listener, and especially the UPSC aspirant, this isn't just abstract theory. Understanding the difference between a packet station and an Entrepôt port, or knowing why trims matters, is the difference between a general understanding and a high-scoring specific answer.
It connects the textbook to the real world and to the exam paper. So here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on as we close. The text mentioned two powerful and seemingly contradictory things happening at the same time: the rise of the WTO, pushing for global rules, and the simultaneous rise of regional trade blocs, which are essentially local clubs.
It raises a massive question about the future. Are we actually moving toward a global village, one big open market for everyone? Or are we fracturing into smaller, gated economic communities? Is the future global, or is it regional?
What does the data suggest?
The data suggests we are trying to do both at once, and that tension between globalization and regionalization is where so much of the drama of modern geopolitics and geography lies.
Something to ponder as you look at that maiden label on your coffee cup or your phone.
And
Before you go, a final reminder. This deep dive was brought to you by the Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel. Please, if you got value from this, go subscribe. It helps us immensely.
if you are capable, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Keeps the lights on and this high-quality, free content flowing.
Don't forget the public Telegram channel for the free notes and practice PYQs. And for the premium experience, the detailed notes, the extra PYQs, the model mains answers, join the private Telegram library.
Just DM the public channel to get the details to join. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep connecting the dots.
We'll catch you in the next deep dive. Signing off.